As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
A follow-up on the Sony Bungie story we did last week. If you guys remember, obviously, Sony acquired Bungie in a $3.6 billion deal. The headline here is Sony offers Bungie employees $1.2 billion retention incentive plan. The subheadline says Sony's offering Bungie employees a $1.2 billion incentive program in an effort to keep them at the company following the buyout. In their recent earnings, Sony says it's prepared to pay $1.2 billion on a long-term incentive plan that will reward Bungie employees who stay with the company. I didn't realize this, maybe you guys did, but that's coming out of the $3.6 billion. So $2.4 billion is for the direct buyout of Bungie's shares. The $1.2 billion is purely for this incentive plan, retention incentive plan. Deferred payments are planned across multiple years following the buyout closure. The company is prepared to pay about $792 million in deferred incentive payments in the first 2 years after the deal ends. Bungie will have unprecedented freedom under Sony. It says, enjoying full creative execution while remaining independent to self-own, publish, and release its games across all platforms. Now that we have a bit more detail, guys, on the $3.6 billion breakout here, has anyone's mind changed at all on the Sony Bungie acquisition? Because, we were talking about how $3.6 billion, it's not worth one Star
You're breaking
Wars.
up a little bit, but I think I got the question, so I could start if you guys want. No,
Sure.
My mind hasn't changed. I mean, even at $2.4 billion, if that's what you're buying the IP for, I still think that's a pretty hefty price. I do think this is incredibly smart that they're keeping the talent because, we sort of talked about it last week that we saw this more as a talent acquisition, albeit Destiny is a good IP. It's sort of all Bungie has at the moment, and it is not worth $3.6 billion. So the fact that they're going to be committing a ton of resources to keep the great development team that they've acquired, I think is very smart. Shows that this is a strong team. They have great live service capabilities. They have a lot that Sony doesn't currently have. And developers are expensive. Recruiting a lot of developers is tough to do at scale. And we're seeing a ton of money being thrown around in Web3 gaming. Like if you literally have a PowerPoint and can fog a mirror right now, you can get millions of dollars as a startup building Web3 games. I mean, there's just so much money trying to approach that market that you need to retain talent as a developer, I think.
It's hard to argue with good points like that. It just, in my gut, I just read this and it just kind of sounds weak, doesn't it? Like, please stay with us. We're Sony. We're buying you. You're coming under one of the most well-known umbrellas in all of gaming, and please stay here. Please don't leave. It just sounds weak to me.
Well, is it weak, or is it Sony learned from Bobby Kotick's mistake, right? Like the Bungie folks have shown impressive disloyalty, if anything, right? Like they got acquired. Essentially, they had this partnership with Activision Blizzard, and then 2 years, what was it, like not even 2 years later, decided they wanted to go out on their own and basically just jump ship and left Activision Blizzard sort of high and dry. Maybe Sony realizes they have to do something, right? They can't just leave it. But can you really fault Sony for wanting to retain employees in the multi-billion-dollar acquisition they just made?
I can because it would undercut the premise of acquiring that company in the first place, because you're raising another red flag that they have a history of disloyalty and being disruptive. And we're already saying that they're overpriced, and now we're paying even more to buy their loyalty. It's like 3 red flags in a row for me now. That just kind of further pushes me against the acquisition.
To be fair, and Paul, you would know this better than I, but I feel like this happens a lot. You just don't explicitly see it broken out. Like, it's very common when an M&A transaction happens, unless you're buying like a product or a brand and it's like people don't matter. You got to keep people there. Otherwise, you just bought the license to Bungie, and anyone who knows how to build the game is gone. Like, I think this is very common. It's just rarely broken out so explicitly.
Well, it's a great sort of segue to my other point. Lindsay, before I make it, go ahead. I know you wanted to talk.
No, go ahead.
On this.
Make your point first.
No. It's more another question for you guys is, would anyone have thought differently about the Activision Blizzard acquisition if we saw something similar, right? That said, $60, $70 billion for Activision Blizzard, of which $25 billion is to retain employees, right? Like,
they have more titles and way more employees than Bungie, though, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have thought differently about that?
It's not one failing game. It's not one failing game. They have one.
Just because they have like 4 failing games. Right?
Oh, I actually, I totally agree with your point, Jimmy, but I see it the opposite way, I guess, in that there's way more bureaucracy layered into Activision Blizzard that needs help and needs innovation. Whereas at Bungie, it's so small and there's so many people that are probably, hopefully, dedicated to the company and to the projects themselves, if not dedicated to the acquisition at least, that it might be worth retaining that talent and at least that knowledge base. I mean, I suppose if you wanted to get rid of them all in 10 years, that's fine. But for right now, you have to have someone who's been there teaching the ropes or putting forth the work at this point. So you can't buy a company's IP and then have no idea how to use it either.
It's one of those things where, just to be clear, my stance on this, on Sony doing this with Bungie, I think good for Sony. Like, I think I applaud it. We all, I think, agreed that this is buying the people more than anything. They're spending a lot of money for just Destiny. And so if you're buying the people, you want to keep the people. And more importantly, you want to keep them happy. Money is a great way to keep people happy. Like, I applaud this. If anything, it makes me more worried about what it says about Activision Blizzard not showing a similar breakout, if they're even thinking about retention at all, because maybe Microsoft doesn't care, right? Like, if half of Activision Blizzard quits, maybe they're like, they did the hard part for us, right?
I just see it as they're so excited to work for Microsoft. That was the sense I got from the people I spoke with at Blizzard. They're so excited, but that might be more a result of their turmoil that they have been going through, right? And the salvation they received. But it's just, to me, the difference was Microsoft's great. We can't wait to go work for them, versus Bungie is, well, do we really? We screwed around with Activision Blizzard in the past because we didn't want those overlords. Do we really want the Sony overlords? Where, well, we'll take the golden handcuffs.
I do wonder how much. What it is. I mean, Bungie has always been a private company, so like, I wonder how many employees had equity, right? Like, that could be something where it's like there never was an equity compensation structure, just because it's historically always been a private company, and the people who own the company might be 5 investors. So like, yeah, they got the 2.4 billion, but that doesn't mean that everyone else at the company is going to stick around. They didn't get a big payday, so it makes sense to top them up with stock and options and retain them. So like, I think we're reading way too much into the situation. It's like, this is super common when there's an acquisition. You have to keep the talent, otherwise you basically just bought computers and a game that nobody's there to build.